Hey guys, imagine this. You're standing on a quiet road in medieval Europe, the kind of path that winds through farmland and tiny villages. The morning air feels heavy with mist, and the only sound is your own footsteps crunching against the dirt. Up ahead, you see tall stone walls rising above the fields, their gray surface streaked with moss and age. Beyond those walls lies a world that most people never get to enter, a place where daily life is stricter, slower, and far more disciplined than anything you have known. You're about to step through the gates of a monastery. The monastery is not just a building. It's an entire little world of its own. As you approach, you see a heavy wooden gate, iron-banded and weathered from decades of use. It creaks slowly as a porter pulls it open. On the other side, silence greets you, a silence so deep that even the crows circling above seem muted. You take your first steps inside, leaving behind the chatter of townsfolk, the noise of the market, and the rhythms of ordinary life. Here, things move differently. The walls enclose not only the church but also gardens, sleeping quarters, storage rooms, a refectory where meals are eaten, and long corridors that echo with footsteps. Inside these walls, every monk follows the same routine, one laid out centuries earlier by Saint Benedict. You feel a sense of gravity. Your life is about to be transformed into obedience, prayer, and labor. There is no returning to the freedoms you knew outside. A brother greets you with a nod, but says nothing. His silence is not rudeness. It is the rule. Words here are precious, reserved for prayer or necessity. He motions for you to follow. You walk through the cloister, a square walkway that surrounds a garden in the center. The arches cast long shadows, and the garden smells faintly of herbs, lavender, sage, and rosemary. This is the heart of the monastery, where monks pass every day on their way to prayer, work, or rest. You are led to a small chamber where you are told to wait. The chamber is bare, with a single wooden stool and a crucifix on the wall. Here, you reflect quietly while your fate is decided. The abbot, the leader of the monastery, will soon meet you. He will decide whether you are ready to give up your old life entirely. You might feel nervous, but there's also a strange calmness in the air, like the stone walls themselves are urging you to let go of restlessness. When the abbot finally arrives, he is dressed in simple robes. His face is lined with age, but his eyes are sharp and steady. He studies you silently before asking the only question that matters: are you ready to surrender your will? Not just today, but for every day that follows. Because once you commit, your life no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the rhythm of prayer, the demands of labor, and the strict discipline of the rule. You nod. Words feel unnecessary here. And so, your initiation begins. Your hair is trimmed short. Your clothes from the outside world are taken away, and you are given a plain robe of coarse wool. It is scratchy against your skin, but that is the point. Comfort is not a goal here. Every detail is meant to remind you of humility. Even the rope belt tied around your waist is not an accessory, but a symbol of binding yourself to this life. Once robed, you walk with the abbot through the corridors. The sound of your sandals echoes faintly against the stone. You pass the chapel, where candles flicker before icons of Christ and the saints. The air smells of beeswax and incense, heavy and sweet. You realize that this will be the center of your days. The chapel, where you will return again and again to chant psalms, to kneel in prayer, and to listen for silence. The abbot explains that within these walls, time is not measured by clocks but by bells. When the bell rings, you rise. When it rings again, you gather with your brothers for prayer. Later, another bell calls you to the fields or to the refectory for meals. Every sound, every movement, every hour is guided by rhythm, not by choice. Freedom, as you once knew it, has been left behind at the gate. You begin to notice the faces of the other monks. They move slowly and deliberately, their gazes lowered. Some are young, barely older than you. Others are old, their beards white, their steps heavy. All seem absorbed in the same invisible current that runs through this place, a current of obedience. And now you have joined them. That night, you are shown to your cell. It is a small, narrow room with nothing more than a straw mattress, a wooden stool, and a small cross above the bed. No decorations, no luxuries, nothing to distract you. Here, in this silence, you lie down for the first time as a novice monk. Outside, the wind hums softly against the stone walls. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls, reminding you that dawn will come sooner than you expect. You close your eyes, knowing that tomorrow, before the sun even rises, you will be summoned to the chapel for your first prayer of the day. You are inside the monastery now, and life has already changed. Inside the monastery, your days are no longer your own. They belong to a rule written centuries earlier, the Regula Sancti Benedicti, or the Rule of Saint Benedict. You soon discover that this single book governs every movement you make, every word you say, and even the thoughts you are supposed to allow yourself. It is not a gentle guideline. It is a strict framework meant to bend your will, to shape you into obedience, humility, and stability. The rule divides the day into blocks of prayer, labor, reading, and rest. It tells you when to wake, when to eat, when to speak, and when to keep silent. Nothing is left to chance, even the smallest detail. How many hours of sleep you get, how much bread you are allowed to eat, how often you confess your faults, has already been decided for you. To an outsider, it might seem unbearable, but to those inside, it is considered a path to holiness. You learn quickly that the heart of the rule is obedience. Obedience to the abbot, who acts as a father figure. Obedience to the other brothers who share in your struggles. Obedience even to the ringing of the bell, which becomes your true master. When the bell calls you, you must rise, no matter how tired you are, no matter how deep your sleep was. To delay even a moment is considered disobedience, a fault that requires penance. Humility is another central command. The rule demands that you lower yourself in all things, never raising your voice, never drawing attention, never claiming your own will over that of the community. Pride is seen as the greatest enemy. You are to see yourself as the lowest of all, always ready to listen, always ready to serve. Even when you feel certain that you are right, you must bow to the decision of the abbot. Silence, too, is woven into your new life. In the world outside, words flowed easily, in markets, in taverns, in families. But here, speech is tightly controlled. You are allowed to speak only when necessary, and even then, with few words. At meals, no one talks. In corridors, no one calls out. Silence wraps itself around you like a second robe. At first, it feels heavy, but gradually it begins to feel like a shield, protecting you from distraction and temptation. The rule even dictates how you eat. Meals are simple: bread, vegetables, perhaps some cheese or fish on certain days. Meat from four-legged animals is forbidden for monks, who live strictly under the Benedictine order. You eat only what is given, never asking for more, never wasting what you are served. The meal is taken in silence, while a brother reads aloud from Scripture, or the writings of early saints. Your body is nourished, but so is your soul. Sleep is restricted too. Benedict knew that too much rest led to laziness, so the monks are given only a few hours of sleep each night. broken by the need to rise before dawn for prayer. Even your bed is part of the discipline. Just a simple mattress, no pillows, no comforts. You lie down weary and you rise weary, because the goal is not comfort but devotion. The rule also has clear instructions about possessions. You own nothing. Every item you use, from your robe to your blanket to your tools, belongs to the community. If you once carried coins in your pocket, you will not carry them again. If you once prized a family heirloom, it has no place here. The act of letting go of possessions is meant to loosen your attachment to the world and remind you that nothing belongs to you, not even your own time. Punishment is written into the rule as well. When you fail, when you disobey, when you give in to temptation, there is correction. Sometimes it is mild, such as extra prayers or a period of fasting. Sometimes it is harsher, eating alone instead of with the community, or being publicly corrected by the abbot in front of the brothers. The purpose is never cruelty, but training. Like iron in the fire, your will is meant to be reshaped by heat and pressure. The rule even anticipates rebellion. Benedict knew that monks might resist, that they might argue or complain. For such moments he commands patience. The abbot is to guide with firmness, yet also with compassion, like a shepherd guiding restless sheep. But the expectation is clear. Eventually, the monk must bend. The rule does not adjust to the man. The man adjusts to the rule. As days pass, you begin to feel the invisible cage tightening around you. At first, it is uncomfortable. You miss the freedom of deciding your own actions, of speaking when you wished, of eating until you were full. But slowly, a strange sense of rhythm takes over. The rule removes the burden of choice. You no longer worry about what comes next. The bell tells you. The community shows you. The words of the rule guide you. In a way, it is both suffocating and freeing at once. The abbot reminds you that the rule is not punishment, but medicine. It is designed to heal the sickness of pride, the restlessness of the human heart. By submitting, you are meant to grow stronger in spirit. You may not feel it yet, but the longer you live inside these walls, the more the rule will shape you. What once felt impossible will one day feel natural. What once felt harsh will one day feel like a strange kind of peace. And so, your journey continues. You are no longer simply inside the monastery. You are inside the rule. The first time you hear it, you almost think it's part of a dream. A faint bell rings somewhere in the darkness, echoing through stone corridors and into the narrow cell where you lie half asleep. The sound is thin but insistent, a metallic voice calling you out of rest. Your body protests. You had barely closed your eyes what feels like moments ago, but there is no hesitation allowed. The rule demands you rise, no matter how heavy your limbs, no matter how much your body aches for more sleep. You push aside the rough woolen blanket and sit up in the cold. The air is biting. In winter, frost sometimes creeps along the edges of the walls, and your breath fogs in front of you. There is no fire in your cell, no comfort waiting. The chill is a constant companion, a reminder that life here is not about ease, but about endurance. You slip your feet into worn sandals and tighten the rope belt around your robe. The bell continues to toll, steady and patient, until the entire monastery stirs. From every corner, other monks are waking too, moving silently into the corridors. The shuffle of sandals on stone creates a low whisper that joins the bell, a sound that carries everyone toward the chapel. No one speaks. No one yawns aloud. Silence rules even in these earliest hours, when the body longs most to break it. You follow the procession through the cloister, the night sky still thick above the open courtyard. Stars gleam faintly overhead, cold and distant, while the moonlight casts sharp shadows on the stone arches. A lantern or two flickers as a brother carries it forward, guiding the path. The rest of you walk by memory, by rhythm, by trust. The monastery has its own way of teaching you to see in the dark, to walk steadily where the world outside would stumble. Inside the chapel, candles burn weakly against the vastness of the stone hall. Their small flames tremble with each draft of air, throwing long shadows across pillars and benches. You take your place with the others, standing side by side. The air smells of old incense and melted wax, an aroma that clings to every surface. Your body still begs for sleep, but your mind begins to sharpen in the silence. The chanting begins. A single voice rises first, clear and steady, reciting the opening words of a psalm. Then the rest join, weaving into a low, continuous current of sound. It fills the hall, echoing back from the stone, surrounding you in a sea of words. The language is Latin, the words ancient, their meaning both distant and deeply alive. You do not need to grasp every syllable to feel their weight. They are prayers meant to bind time itself, to turn each hour into devotion. This service, called Matins, marks the first prayer of the day. It is long, often stretching for hours. Each psalm is recited or sung in careful order, each verse an offering meant to hold back the darkness, both outside and inside. Your body sways slightly with the rhythm, fighting the heaviness of fatigue. Sometimes your eyes close, and for a heartbeat you almost slip back into sleep. But the voices around you pull you back. The rule is merciless in this. Your presence, your attention, your obedience must not falter. When Matins ends, there is no return to bed. The night has passed for you, even though the sun has not yet risen. Instead, the community continues into another brief service, lauds, which greets the coming dawn. The psalms shift from pleading to praise, lifting weary voices toward the first promise of light. Outside, the horizon begins to pale, and faint rays creep into the chapel's narrow windows. You realize that you have greeted the day before it even arrived. The fatigue does not leave you, but you begin to notice something else stirring in its place. Rising before dawn creates a strange clarity, as though you are slightly detached from the ordinary world. Most of the village beyond the walls is still asleep, wrapped in dreams, unaware of the day already unfolding. But you and your brothers stand here, chanting words older than memory, shaping the morning with prayer. It feels both burdensome and sacred. When the last notes fade and the candles are snuffed, the community files silently out of the chapel. The cold air of the cloister meets you again, but now the first light has broken the edge of the sky. Birds stir faintly in the distance, their calls joining the fading echoes of psalms. You return to yourself for a moment, not to rest, but to prepare for the labor ahead. The day has only begun, and already your body feels the weight of it. In this rhythm, you learn that sleep is no longer your master. Comfort is not your reward. What matters is obedience to the bell, the discipline of rising when called, and the offering of your voice in prayer, even when it trembles with exhaustion. Slowly, day by day, the act of waking before dawn ceases to feel like torture. It becomes something else, an anchor, a reminder that your time is not your own, but belongs to something far greater. And so, every morning begins this way. The bell calls, the brothers rise, the psalms flow through cold stone halls. The outside world still dreams, but inside these walls, the day has already been given to God. The sound of voices becomes your new sunrise. Each morning, After the first bell has dragged you out of your cell, you find yourself standing shoulder to shoulder with the brothers, chanting in the chapel. The stone walls hold the sound, bouncing it back until it seems to come from every direction at once. Cold drafts slip between the arches, brushing your skin beneath the rough wool robe. But the chanting keeps you anchored, like a rope in the dark. The psalms are endless. Some mornings it feels as though time itself has slowed, that the words will never finish. You recite verses from memory or follow the worn manuscript that one of the brothers holds, but often the meaning of the words drifts away. Instead, what remains is rhythm, the steady rise and fall of voices, the low hum of Latin phrases repeated again and again. At first, the repetition feels heavy, but after a while, it becomes strangely soothing, as if your mind drifts on a river of sound without needing to think. The air in the chapel is always chill, especially in winter. Stone keeps the cold even when fires burn elsewhere, and your breath fogs faintly as you chant. Your fingers grow numb if you hold a book too long, and sometimes you shift your weight just to keep warm. Yet no one complains. The cold itself feels like part of the prayer, another offering of discomfort given freely. You begin to see it not as suffering, but as discipline, a way of sharpening the soul through the body's hardship. Occasionally, one brother's voice falters, a cough, a moment of drowsy silence, a stumble over a word. But the chant continues without pause, the others carrying the sound forward until the slip disappears into the flow. You learn quickly that here, the individual voice does not matter. What matters is the unity, the single stream of sound created by dozens of men breathing as one. Your own fatigue, your own distraction, your own discomfort, all of it dissolves into the larger current. Light filters slowly through the narrow windows as the chanting continues. The pale beams strike the stone floor, casting long shadows that stretch and shift as the hours pass. Candles burn down to stubs, wax pooling on the holders, but still the psalms roll on. Sometimes you catch yourself wondering how many have been sung before you. How many monks for centuries have stood in this same place, reciting these same words, at this same hour. The thought is dizzying, like stepping into a river that has flowed for hundreds of years before you ever set foot in it. The chanting is not just prayer, it is also a way of shaping the hours. Each psalm divides the darkness into measured fragments, a rhythm that makes time itself obedient. Out in the world, people wake when they wish, eat when they hunger, speak when they feel the urge. Here, every moment bends to a schedule, every sound to a pattern. You feel time less as freedom and more as a corridor you are walking down, guided by the voices around you. Your body sometimes rebels. Knees ache from standing too long. Eyes droop as exhaustion creeps in. The temptation to let your voice fade, to mumble instead of project, pulls at you. Yet the rule leaves no room for weakness. The abbot's watchful eyes notice even small lapses. If you slacken, discipline waits, and so you push forward, chanting louder, until your chest vibrates with the effort. The sound fills you, drowns your fatigue, and for a moment you feel lifted above the weight of the body. When the chanting finally ends, silence rushes back like a tide pulling out. It is almost startling after so many hours of sound. The brothers bow their heads in unison, then turn to file silently from the chapel. Your voice feels raw, your throat dry, yet there is a strange satisfaction in the weariness. You have given the first gift of the day, not coins, not labor, but your breath, your voice, your endurance. Outside in the cloister, the morning has taken hold. The sky has shifted from gray to pale blue, and the garden in the courtyard glistens with dew. you walk in silence, feeling both drained and sharpened, as though you have been carved into shape by the chanting itself. There is no applause, no thanks, no reward, only the knowledge that tomorrow, before the sun again, you will do the same. In these cold stone halls, chanting is not about beauty or comfort. It is about surrender. You surrender your sleep, your warmth, your voice, and even your individuality to something larger. The sound you help create is not yours alone. It belongs to the monastery, to the centuries of brothers before you, and to the God whose presence is sought in every note. The echo of the last psalm still lingers in your ears as you prepare for the next task of the day. Chanting may be finished, but the rhythm of obedience is only beginning.